In our headlines on this Monday, February 10th, here in South Korea. The U.S. will impose a 25% tariff on steel and aluminium imports, as well as reciprocal tariffs on countries that levy any such import duties on American products. Meanwhile, here in South Korea, the Constitutional Court launches its final week of hearings for President Yoon's impeachment trial, but pundits believe these sessions may be extended. And the state-run Korea Development Institute believes the South Korean economy continues to face external risk factors, especially in light of the Trump administration's tariff campaign and its broader implications on global trade. U.S. President Donald Trump is announcing on this Monday a blanket tariff of 25% on all steel and aluminium imports into the U.S. Our Park Ono covers these intentions and more.
The tariffs imposed by the U.S. are intensifying. On Sunday, U.S. President Donald Trump said he will announce plans for new 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum shipments to the U.S. He also said reciprocal tariffs for countries that impose tariffs on the U.S. will be revealed in the coming days and will take effect almost immediately.
If they charge us, we charge them. But if they are charging us 130% and we're charging them nothing, it's not going to stay that way. Every country will be reciprocal, that's right.
This comes as the ongoing trade war between the U.S. and China has intensified. The U.S. implemented an additional 10% tariff on all Chinese imports to the U.S. starting last Tuesday. In retaliation, China announced plans to impose tariffs of 10 to 15% on items, including coal, liquefied natural gas, and crude oil from the U.S., effective Monday. As China previously expressed its intention to negotiate with the U.S., there had been an expectation that an agreement would be reached before actual implementation. Last week, Trump also shared his intention to talk with China's President Xi Jinping, but said he was in no hurry.
No, we'll speak to him at the appropriate time. I'm in no rush. The deficit with China is about $1 trillion. Think of it, $1 trillion. They're using our money to build their military. And Biden let that happen.
That's compared to when he delayed the implementation of additional tariffs on Canada and Mexico for a month after some discussions. But as both the U.S. and China have expressed their intention to hold talks, pundits believe there's still a chance of reaching a consensus. The two countries previously ended the trade war during the first Trump administration after 18 months, after China agreed to purchase more U.S. products, while the U.S. held off on imposing additional high tariffs on Chinese goods. Park Ono, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, over in Paris on this Monday, the two-day Summit for Action on Artificial Intelligence begins with world leaders, industry heavyweights and related scholars poised to take part in the latest gathering. The event seeks to set up standards and solutions for more sustainable, ethical AI advances for universal progress and broader public interest. It also follows the first such meeting at Bletchley Park back in November 2023 and here in Seoul earlier in May last year. Also this week, the Trump administration will actively seek talks with its European counterparts to end Russian aggression against Ukraine. Our Lee Sing-jae has details.
U.S. President Donald Trump's National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, said Sunday that Washington will hold talks with European officials this week on how to end the Ukraine war. Speaking to NBC's Meet the Press, Waltz said a delegation, including the U.S. Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Vice President, and the U.S. Special Envoy to Europe, will hold talks on ending the war. The National Security Advisor did not go into details, but said that Trump is ready to bring the Ukraine issue to the table this week. This includes the issue of future American aid to Ukraine. However, Waltz stressed that the U.S. needs to recoup the costs through a partnership with the Ukrainians over its rare earth and natural resources, all of which are going to be discussed this week. While Waltz says Trump will end the war, the security guarantees will be up to the Europeans. The announcement of the high-level talks comes as the New York Post last Friday reported that President Trump has spoken to President Putin about ending the Ukraine war. In an interview aboard Air Force One, Trump said he spoke on the phone with Putin to try to negotiate an end to the Ukraine war, but would not say how many times the two leaders have spoken since his return to the Oval Office last month. While Trump did not go into specific details of their phone call, he said that Putin wants to see people stop dying, adding that the 3-year-old war never would have happened if he had been president in 2022. The Kremlin has neither confirmed nor denied that the two leaders have spoken on the phone to discuss ending the war. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The Unification Ministry here has urged UN member nations to uphold Security Council resolutions against North Korea while raising issue with the regime's labor exports to Russia. Now, these latest remarks follow recent intelligence reports here that have said North Korea had sent thousands of workers to Russian construction sites last year. The reports claim these soaring labor exports are driven by the, quote, ever-present demand for young labor in Russia's Far East. The 119th U.S. Congress includes Marilyn Strickland, a Democrat representing Washington's 10th district that also houses the largest military installation in American West. She's also a Korean American who believes firmly in the security alliance between the U.S. and South Korea. Our Choi Min-jung reports.
Korean-American Congresswoman Marilyn Strickland, one of the first 3 Korean-American women elected to Congress and re-elected to represent Washington's 10th district for a 3rd term, affirmed that the Seoul-Washington alliance will remain ironclad regardless of South Korea's current political landscape. In an exclusive interview with Arirang, Strickland addressed the implications of South Korea's domestic political turbulence regarding President Yoon's impeachment, noting that while the situation is unfortunate, it exemplifies democracy in action.
It's why you have separate co-equal branches of government to serve as checks and balances. So in many ways, what happened is a prime example of how democracy is meant to work and supposed to work. We want to make sure that we are staying strong with our partners and allies who value and uplift democracy.
With former President Donald Trump returning to the White House for a 2nd term, concerns over the continuation of America First policies, including increased defense cost sharing, are mounting. However, Strickland noted that despite media speculation, no formal discussions have taken place.
And so we want to make sure that it's being done fairly, we're doing it conscientiously, but understanding that having military presence in Korea is important, for a free, safe, and open Indo-Pacific.
An area of concern for the Korean-American community is Trump's intensified immigration policies, including deportations. Some 150,000 Koreans living in the U.S. are reportedly subject to deportation following a Trump administration order. 20,000 of those are believed to be Korean adoptees who have not yet received U.S. citizenship. Strickland expressed concern, saying immigrants play an essential role across all sectors in the U.S. and that the American economy will collapse if they are deported simply for lacking documentation.
So as a Korean American, as someone who values, immigrant talent, I definitely want to make sure that we're able to stop Trump from doing the wrong thing, but finding a way to do the right thing as well.
The rise in Korean-American political representation, exemplified by Strickland, signals a growing influence that will not only strengthen ties between Seoul and Washington, but also shape the broader political landscape of the Korean-American community in the U.S. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The Constitutional Court launches its final week of hearings for President Yoon's impeachment trial starting tomorrow, and it has yet to announce whether or not more sessions will be held before its verdict on the case. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young has the latest.
The Constitutional Court has not yet announced whether it will extend President Yoon's impeachment trial, which is scheduled to wrap up this week. A court official told reporters Monday that the 8-member judicial bench has not yet conveyed whether additional hearings will be held beyond this coming Thursday. With time running out and just 2 hearings left at the Constitutional Court this week, making an extension is likely. On Tuesday, the court will hold Yoon's 7th trial hearing with 4 witnesses summoned to testify. First up will be former Interior Minister Lee Sang-min, who is expected to be questioned extensively about the meeting of cabinet members held before the martial law declaration on December 3rd last year. The National Assembly's impeachment panel says the president had bypassed cabinet procedures before imposing the decree. Also standing witness will be National Security Advisor Shin Won-sik, who served as Defense Minister until September last year. Shin is likely to be grilled over whether there was prior planning before December 3rd. As for former National Intelligence Service Deputy Director Baek Jong-wook and National Election Commission Secretary General Kim Yong-bin, questions are expected to focus on election fraud allegations raised by President Yoon as a pretext for declaring martial law. The 8th and final hearing is currently scheduled for Thursday.
In order to conclude the hearings, the bench must hear the closing arguments from both legal teams, as well as President Yoon's final statement. It seems the Constitutional Court has not yet instructed either side to prepare their final arguments.
Meanwhile, the court on Monday concluded hearings on a dispute case regarding acting President Choi Sang-mok's decision to withhold the appointment of Constitutional Court Justice nominee Ma Eun-hyuk, while appointing 2 others recommended alongside him. The case was filed by National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik, who claims Choi neglected to follow a parliamentary resolution to appoint 3 justices in December last year. Choi, however, had pledged to appoint a 3rd justice after bipartisan agreement on the candidate. The court initially planned to deliver its ruling last Monday, but accepted Choi's request for additional arguments to be made. Choi's side said Monday that Speaker Woo had unilaterally filed the case by bypassing a plenary session vote, thus the dispute should be made invalid. The court says it will reach a verdict and notify the involved parties. The question of Ma's appointment has caused a strong political standoff, as the left-leaning judge would become the 9th member of the judicial bench, as it rules on President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment case. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the Korean economy continues to face external risk factors, especially in light of the Trump administration's tariff campaign and its broader implications on global trade. Our correspondent Moon Hae-ryun has more.
Concerns about rising risks to South Korea's economy are being raised in light of trade tensions between Washington and Beijing. On Monday, South Korea's state-run Korea Development Institute reiterated these concerns for the 2nd consecutive month in its February economic trends report. The agency stated that the domestic economy remains in a moderate growth phase in terms of production, but deteriorating external conditions are increasing risks. The report emphasized the escalating trade disputes, particularly involving the United States, as well as the persistent political instability in South Korea, both of which have heightened concerns over worsening trade conditions. The KDI had first raised alarm about growing downside risks in its January economic trends report, marking the first such warning since January 2023. The report highlights sluggish domestic demand, with private consumption and construction investment recovering at a slower pace than expected. At the same time, export growth, previously a key driver of the economy, is beginning to slow, particularly in sectors excluding semiconductors. The KDI noted that high interest rates and weakened consumer sentiment due to political instability have contributed to continued sluggish consumption. It added that retail sales have continued to decline across most categories, extending the downturn in goods consumption. Amid prolonged weak domestic demand, the number of employed workers declined in December, signaling a slowdown in job growth. Investment trends were mixed. While facility investment, particularly in the semiconductor sector, showed resilience, construction investment continued its steep decline due to a significant drop in completed projects. Financial markets also remain volatile due to external risks, particularly uncertainty surrounding the new U.S. Trump administration. On inflation, the KDI noted that recent increases in the exchange rate and global oil prices have contributed to higher consumer price growth, but weak domestic demand is exerting downward pressure on inflation. In January, South Korea's consumer prices rose by 2.2% year-on-year. However, the KDI suggested that if private consumption remains sluggish, inflation is likely to slow in the coming months. As concerns over weak domestic demand, slowing exports, and external uncertainties grow, the KDI's continued warnings signal heightened risks for South Korea's economic outlook in the months ahead. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
And against that backdrop, main opposition Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung called for recovery and growth as national priorities amid the ongoing political uncertainty. Addressing the National Assembly today, Lee suggested a supplementary budget of 30 trillion Korean won, or around $20 billion, to be earmarked for economic recovery. Separately, he also proposed the introduction of a 4-day workweek system, claiming that reducing working hours is key to becoming an advanced technological society. Meanwhile, government officials and ruling lawmakers have shared intentions to invest over 3 trillion Korean won, or some $2.2 billion on strategic defense technology by the year 2027. According to the agreement announced on this Monday, the support will be extended to 10 related sectors, including artificial intelligence, space technology, and advanced materials. Financial assistance worth up to 5 billion Korean won will also be granted to top small and mid-sized firms and relevant industries to sharpen their edge over the global competition. Over in LA last Friday, Squid Game Season 2 was awarded for Best Foreign Language Series at this year's Critics' Choice Awards. Now, the show's first season, that is, claimed the honor at the 2022 edition of the awards, becoming the first Korean TV drama to do so. Korean actor Lee Jung-jae also clinched Best Actor in a Drama Series back in the year 2022. Other nominees in the same category for this year included Pachinko Season 2. Meanwhile, Season 3 of Squid Game is set to be released on streaming platform Netflix in June. In other news, researchers here have developed an eco-friendly mechanism of purifying the air by using water without producing waste. Our Cha Yun-kyung explains.
Worsening fine dust due to the cold weather has increased the use of air purifiers. However, the need to change filters and waste issues have become a problem. To solve these, researchers have developed an eco-friendly air purifying system that imitates the body's circulatory system. Once polluted air enters the system, microbubbles form in a water container as they pass through an elastic microprocessing filter. The small, even-textured microbubbles capture fine dust and carbon dioxide, sending carbon dioxide outside and oxygen inside through the circulation of water.
We have developed an air purifying system by imitating the human body's circulatory and respiratory system. We can circulate the air inside and outside through the system to dispense VOC and carbon dioxide outdoors. It can solve the issue of microdust and carbon dioxide at the same time.
In tests using a closed space with a mouse inside, the system decreased the level of carbon dioxide by 30%, which saw the mouse's activity increase 53%. Current system's performance deteriorates as filters age and can cause odors. The new system does not require filter cleaning or changing as long as the water is renewed.
The system's driving principles and structures are quite simple and suitable to enlarge in scale, and they can replace pricey and complicated former air purifying systems.
The research team expects that the system will be able to purify air of other pollutants, such as acetone or ethanol. Cha Yun-kyung, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In a significant move under the recent ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas, Israeli forces have withdrawn from a strategic area in Gaza. On Sunday local time, the Israeli military completed their withdrawal from the Netzarim corridor, a critical route that previously divided the Gaza Strip. The move, which will help facilitate the free movement of Palestinians between the northern and southern regions of Gaza, is part of the recent ceasefire agreement with Hamas. Following the withdrawal of Israeli troops, displaced Palestinians have begun returning to their homes. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump, speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One, has reiterated his idea of the U.S. taking ownership of the Gaza Strip, suggesting that sections of the territory could be allocated to other Middle East states to aid in reconstruction efforts. In France, President Emmanuel Macron has used AI-generated deepfake videos of himself to promote the Paris AI Summit. The French president released a series of deepfake videos on Sunday featuring his likeness to promote the Paris AI Summit, set to kick off on Monday local time. The videos shared across his official social media platforms depict Macron in various scenarios, crafted using advanced AI technology. The innovative approach aims to underscore the rapid advancements in artificial intelligence and provoke discourse on its ethical implications. On the eve of the event, Macron and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau shared their thoughts on the importance of leveraging the benefits of AI in an inclusive manner while minimizing risks. The third AI summit will be held for 2 days and will gather leaders from over 80 states. In Europe, the Baltic states of Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia have officially disconnected from the Russian electricity grid and joined the European Union's energy system. The transition on Sunday, which had been planned for several years, marks the end of their dependence on the Soviet-era energy network and aims to improve regional energy security. The move was celebrated in a ceremony attended by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. The merge involved disconnecting from Russia on Saturday and operating as an independent energy grid for 24 hours before linking to the EU grid through connections with Poland, Finland, and Sweden. In Africa, Namibia's first democratically elected president and revered founding father, Sam Nujoma, passed away on Saturday at the age of 95. He had been hospitalized for weeks due to illness in the country's capital, Windhoek. Nujoma led Namibia to independence from apartheid South Africa in 1990 and served as president for 15 years. Before becoming the country's leader, Nujoma had spent almost 30 years in exile. He was officially recognized as the founding father of the Namibian nation in 2005. The current president of Namibia announced a period of national mourning for Nujoma, who was dubbed a freedom fighter. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
The second week of February also started in the freezing cold. There were places where snow has fallen along with this cold wave today. Currently, cold wave warnings and advisories are still in place in many parts of the country today. This long cold wave will gradually ease off as the temperatures rise from tomorrow afternoon. In the meantime, dry weather warnings and advisories have been issued around the East Coast. Gusty wind is also expected today in these coastal areas, so please take extra care not to cause any fires. Tomorrow morning will start off at below 0 degrees in most parts of the country, with Seoul at -5 degrees and Gwangju at -4 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 6 degrees in Seoul, 9 degrees in Daejeon, Gwangju, Daegu, and Busan. On Wednesday, the first full moon of the Lunar New Year, it will rain or snow all over the country. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session. Do stay with us.